This true story will shock you. Listen to the end. It took 25 years to unravel this chilling story. A student from American University left a party and vanished without a trace. From the very beginning, the police had a suspect, but they couldn't prove his guilt. Only several decades later did the podcast creator uncover disturbing details about the case, draw attention from millions of people, and prompt the police to reopen the investigation. Kristin Smart was born on February 20th, 1977, in Augsburg, Germany, but moved with her parents, brother, and sister to the United States at a young age. The family settled in Stockton, California. Her parents worked as teachers for children of American military personnel. After graduating from high school in '96, Kristin enrolled at California Polytechnic State University. In her free time, she worked as a lifeguard at the campus recreation center. On May 25th of that year, a large party was planned at the student fraternity house to celebrate one of the students' birthdays. Kristin intended to attend, but her friends decided against it, so the young woman went to the fraternity house alone. The party was held in a typical American student fashion. A large group drank alcohol, listened to music, and had a good time. That evening, Kristin drank too much, felt unwell, and around 2 a.m., she headed back to her dormitory. However, Kristin could barely walk on her own. Noticing her on the street, 2 other students, Cheryl Anderson and Tim Davis, decided to walk her home. They had both attended the same party. After some time, another student who had also been at the party, Paul Flores, joined them. He offered to walk Kristin to her dormitory since he lived the closest. Cheryl and Tim, needing to go in a different direction, said goodbye to them and left. From that moment on, no one saw Kristin alive again. Initially, her disappearance wasn't taken seriously. Kristin's roommate, Margarita Campos, was the first to become concerned. She was confident that her friend would return home after the party, but that never happened. What heightened her worry was the fact that all of Kristin's belongings, including her passport, wallet, and bank card, were still in the room. This meant she couldn't have simply left. Margarita reported Kristin's disappearance to the campus police only 2 days later, likely holding out hope that Kristin was fine and would return. However, the campus police didn't take the roommate's report seriously. It was the weekend, followed by the U.S. Memorial Day, which is dedicated to honoring fallen American servicemen. The local police simply assumed that Kristin had gone home, and they were not bothered by the fact that she had left all her important belongings and documents in her dorm room. Notably, Kristin's family home was a 7-hour drive from the university campus, a significant distance to spontaneously travel to without money or documents, especially in the middle of the night. A few days later, the local police finally decided to take action and called Kristin's parents. Her mother reported that her daughter hadn't been home in a while and hadn't called her in recent days. This phone call alarmed Kristin's mother, and her parents went to the police. Even then, the officers were reluctant to open an investigation, saying that not much time had passed since Kristin went missing and that she might have just been out with friends. Only on the 4th day after her disappearance did the search begin. Volunteers were the first to look for her, but their efforts yielded no results. The police's first step was to question Paul Flores, who had offered to walk Kristin to her dorm and was likely the last person to see her. He told detectives that they had walked to her dorm together, said goodbye, and then she headed home alone, after which he supposedly went straight to bed. However, discrepancies in his story quickly began to surface. Paul's dorm neighbors saw him take a shower around 5 a.m., even though he and Kristin had parted ways after 2 a.m. Additionally, Paul had a black eye and scratches on his knees. When asked by several people about his injuries, he gave 3 different stories about how he got them. Paul Flores looked highly suspicious, but there was no direct evidence linking him to Kristin's disappearance. A month after Kristin vanished, the police expanded their search to her hometown. There, journalists sensationalized the case, comparing it to the plot of the popular TV show Twin Peaks. News reports even mentioned certain psychics who claimed to have solved the case. According to their version, Kristin had been killed by 2 men on campus grounds, after which her body was taken to a cliff and thrown into the water. Naturally, the police gained nothing from these claims. A year after Kristin's disappearance, her parents filed a lawsuit against Paul Flores, accusing him of being involved in their daughter's disappearance. In 1997, Paul testified under oath, but of all the questions, he only answered one, stating his name. For the rest, he invoked the Fifth Amendment, which allows individuals to avoid self-incrimination. Afterward, Paul's parents countersued Kristin's family, accusing them of causing emotional distress. However, neither of these lawsuits resulted in any real consequences, as the police lacked the evidence to hold Paul accountable. On May 25, 2002, on the 6th anniversary of Kristin's disappearance, authorities officially declared her dead. Despite all the time that had passed, they were no closer to solving the case. This remained unchanged until 2018, when California resident Chris Lambert decided to launch his own podcast series focused on various crimes. At the time of Kristin's disappearance, Chris was 8 years old, and he vividly remembered this eerie story from the news. 22 years later, he decided to conduct his own investigation and was shocked by how neglectfully the police had handled the case over the years. His first step was to speak with all the witnesses from that time. From university students, Chris learned that Paul Flores had a bad reputation. The young man had repeatedly harassed female students, but no official complaints were ever filed. Chris then analyzed the police's actions and concluded that they had made several critical mistakes. Detectives only came to the home of Paul's father, Ruben Flores, 2 months after the girl's disappearance. Considering that Paul lived with his father, the police should have immediately inspected the house. However, when they finally conducted the search, it was done extremely carelessly. The detectives did not bring forensic experts or cadaver dogs trained to detect the scent of decomposition. As a result, the search was essentially useless. The detectives also failed to inspect 2 vehicles belonging to the Flores family, one of which Paul could have used to transport Kristin from the campus to his father's home. A few months after the police visit, one of the cars was sold, and the other was allegedly stolen. The police never even visited Paul's mother's house, where one of the key pieces of evidence was hidden. Chris Lambert discovered that 4 months after Kristin's disappearance, a woman named Mary Lassiter rented the house belonging to Paul's mother. In one of the rooms, she found an earring that strongly resembled the necklace Kristin was wearing when she went missing. This necklace was also featured in the photos of Kristin displayed on billboards around the county. Noticing the similarity, Mary took the earring to the police. And what do you think happened? The police initially refused to add the earring as evidence in the case, and later they lost it altogether. But what Chris uncovered next was truly shocking. The backyard at Paul's mother's house was always paved with concrete, Yet shortly after Kristin's disappearance, a section of the concrete was cut out and replaced with a flower bed. That already seemed suspicious, but things became even stranger. Mary Lassiter, the tenant, told Chris a chilling detail. For a while after moving in, every day at 4:20 a.m. and 4:20 p.m., she heard a sound resembling the alarm of a digital wristwatch. The sound came from the backyard, directly from under that flower bed. One day, the noises stopped. Either the watch's battery died, or someone dug it up and moved it. Chris Lambert went to Kristin Smart's mother to tell her about the findings. Upon hearing the story about the alarm, Kristin's mother was speechless with shock and couldn't speak for several minutes. When she finally did, she revealed that Kristin always set her alarm for 4:20 a.m. because she had to be at work at the campus recreation center by 5 o'clock a.m. When Lambert's podcast aired in 2019, it was listened to by over 6 million people. The public was outraged by how the police had neglected the case for so long, allowing a potential killer to live freely. The new evidence Chris uncovered only intensified the outrage. As a result, the police department decided to reopen the investigation. This time, more than 20 years later, they did their job properly. They conducted searches at 4 locations, including Paul Flores's home. Initially, the police only stated that they had found evidence of interest to the investigation. On January 29, 2020, law enforcement announced that they had seized 2 of Paul's vehicles as evidence. Later, it was revealed that they had finally excavated the backyard at Paul's mother's house, but Kristin's body was not found there. However, the police confirmed they had obtained proof that there were indeed traces of human decomposition beneath the flower bed. On February 11, 2021, news broke that Paul Flores had been arrested. But surprisingly, it was not for Kristin's disappearance. Instead, the arrest was for possession of an unregistered firearm. On March 15th, a judge issued a search warrant for Paul's father's house, and on April 13th, both father and son were taken into custody in connection with Kristin's disappearance. Paul was charged with murder, and his father was accused of being an accessory. According to the investigation, when Paul and Kristin were left alone, the young man began to make advances toward her, but was rebuffed. This explains the scratches and bruises. During the struggle, Paul may have killed Kristin, after which he put her body in the car and took it to his house. Then he and his father buried the body in the backyard of Paul's mother's house and disguised the spot as a flower bed. Sometime later, they decided to dig up the remains and move them to an unknown location. Both father and son have pleaded not guilty, and the trial is still ongoing. However, given the evidence and facts, it is unlikely they will escape punishment, even though justice has been delayed for a long 25 years. Kristin's parents issued a public statement thanking Chris Lambert and millions of concerned people for their collective efforts in uncovering the truth. Now, it is just a matter of waiting for the trial to conclude and for the criminals to receive their punishment.